totally devoted to his family. Smarter than most anyone he meets, and he knows it. Not a people person, in other words. He keeps a seam around to grease the wheel, so to speak. And MI6 thought that Omar was behind the attack, or that he had at least financed it. "Did he?" asked Dad, who had been listening attentively. The only other time I ever saw him paying attention like this was when Andy Gray did the aftermatch analysis. It turns out he did, but not on purpose. He just donated lots of money to a mosque led by an imam who helped coordinate the attacks. I'm pretty sure he knew his money wasn't going to orphanages, but I'm satisfied he didn't know any specifics. And how do you know this? Because I interrogated that imam for about 12 hours. He's dead now. Dad flinched. He knows I've killed people. I've told him about those 2 crackers in the underground, but also about Emma Lestrade's psychotic boyfriend and the U.S. Customs officer who had a go at Kelly and who turned out to have been abusing his power for ages. But killing the boyfriend had happened in something of a daze, as he had just attacked Kelly and subsequently stabbed Melody. And the American, that was more like an accident. I hadn't set out to kill him. But this was different. This was deliberate. I could tell Dad was shocked. Interrogated? Tortured. Not all the time, just when he was holding out on me. That wasn't strictly true, but somehow I didn't want my father to know I'd enjoyed it. "And they know this?" asked Dad, gesturing at the door behind him. "I don't, I suppose. I dumped his body in the trash. He's either in a landfill or an incinerator by now, unless someone saw me. But if it's not that, it may be the fact that I blew up his mosque." You, stammered Dad. "Well, I didn't actually blow it up. I just wanted to set fire to it during Friday prayer. Look, I'll walk you through it. So I accepted a job and came to live with Asim for a while. There I learned he wasn't doing so well. His allowance was cut and he'd been relegated to a small villa. Nice enough, but not for a Saudi prince. He had a staff budget, but spent it all on my salary, which was fine because the palace still sent cleaners over and he ordered food from the palace kitchen. He was actually pretty happy there, playing video games all day and hanging out with his buddies. I never did learn what kind of business deals he was working on, or which one he fucked up, but we got along fine. But I needed to get close to Omar, not Asim. Get it?" Dad just nodded. The bewilderment was back. "So I met this guy from the CIA, John Stein, who, excuse me, I think you meant MI6. "No, CIA. MI6 didn't do jack shit for me here. They barely have a presence. Saudi is left mostly to the Americans, and they saw me coming a mile off. But they are interested in Omar as well, so John told me about a way into Omar's palace." "Which palace is that?" Omar has a palace near Mecca, but for some reason he's here most of the time with his family. He stays in what's called the guest palace on the grounds of the actual royal palace where King Salman lives. There are palaces all over the country. They have a lot of princes. Asim's villa is also technically a palace. It's like an embassy in a way. So, Stein tells me that Omar has a niece, Princess Alexandra. She lives with him, and she has a private tutor, Professor Markan Rasool. If I were to get rid of Rasool, I'd stand a good chance of becoming Alexandra's tutor. Oh, this is a lot to keep track of. Why would... you're a butler. Yeah, it wasn't easy, so I killed Professor Rasool. Dad briefly leaned back and threw up his hands. Of course you did. Dare I ask how? Injection. In his neck, on a yacht, in the Gulf. Dad shook his head, rather cartoonishly. A yacht? Did you sing? What? Yes. How did you... That's on YouTube. Do you know people back home seem to think you're either dead or have taken on a new identity? There's footage of a man who looks like you, except with a beard that it now turns out you actually have, singing Desafinado on this vast yacht in the middle of the ocean. The audio's crap and it's mostly out of focus and from quite far away, but some people swear that it's you. Sounds like you, too. Well, it was me. Long story. Anyway, I killed the professor, and shortly after I was hired to tutor Princess Alexandra in economics. And geography, but that's less urgent. And did you put the professor in an incinerator too? No, made it look like he'd accidentally hung himself with a belt whilst pleasuring himself. Ew. Yes, I get that from my father. Just that, as far as I can tell. Oh, and the dimpled chin. Yeah, so Omar found him with one of his underpants on his face and obviously kept that very quiet. A scene was there as well. So now I become Alexandra's tutor and I move into the guest palace with Omar. Except not really, because he and his family live in a different section. I hardly ever meet them. In fact, when I teach the princess, it's like the warm-up to a Punch and Judy show. She's behind the curtain. But hey, at least I'm on the inside now. There's this laptop that the CIA is interested in, and so am I, because at that point I didn't know much about Omar's involvement yet. But then he introduces me to his favorite imam, Musa ibn Jafar. He's in charge of the Hittin Mosque, one of the strictest in town. It's where the Mutawa hang out, the religious police, like a clubhouse for the Gestapo. That's the imam who turned out to be behind the attacks. Actually, not just him. There are others, but he did the recruiting and brought in the money. He also paid off the relatives of the attackers, who get a monthly stipend for the loss of their family member. And his mosque was used to stash everything: weapons, drugs, and, as it turns out, explosives. Which you detonated. That was on the news. In fact, it still is. One of the largest attacks in living history on the Arabian Peninsula. That's only because Iraq isn't on the peninsula, and I'm sure Yemen has seen worse. But I didn't detonate those bombs. In fact, I had no idea they were there, or I'd have stayed well away. What I did was fill the fire suppression system water tank with ethyl alcohol. I'd found a stash somewhere. Then, during Friday prayer, I set off the alarm, and that was going to burn everyone inside to a crisp. I'd have used Cyclone B, but the man said it was on back order. My father's face performed some interesting gymnastics while I spoke. You did what? You? What? Dad threw himself back in his chair, causing a horrible scraping noise. I used the sprinkler system to douse a bunch of the most fanatical Muslims I could find in alcohol, which they do voluntarily whenever they think they can get away with it, by the way, and set fire to them, during Friday prayer, which is kind of a big deal. But then, somehow, the explosives Imam Musa had in storage also went off and took out half the building. Half the building? Half a city block? Martin, what the hell has gotten into you? That's terrorism. Keep your voice down, Dad. That's not terrorism. That's payback. A taste of their own medicine. These people jump for joy each time something like this happens in the West. Absolutely over the fucking moon every time there's a shooting in a disco or a stabbing or a beheading. And I didn't plan any explosion, did I? No, just a cremation. Bloody hell, I can't believe I'm hearing this. I mean, going after that imam is probably justifiable, but you don't know these people, Dad. They're brimming with hatred. Clearly they're not the only ones. How am I going to tell this to your mother, Martin? How is our boy doing, Alfred? Well, he's got a silly beard now, and you'll never guess. He's a mass murderer. It's only mass murder when it involves people. Each and every one of the fuckers I've killed would have cheered at your beheading, simply for you being a Christian. I'm not. That's even worse. Atheism is worse to them. Look, Dad, I promised Diana I'd find the people responsible and make them suffer, and I promised that chap I stuffed into the escalator engine I'd take 10 lives for each person killed in his attack. That was 9 people, so they owe us 90. Plus 10 for Diana to make it an even 100. I've been doing it piecemeal, but that was taking forever. Piecemeal? You mean killing people individually? Yes. 2 customs officers, although one of them slipped and cracked his skull, but I'm still counting him. 1 Mutawa in a shopping mall. 2 in the desert, that's 5. Oh, Rasul, that's 6. And Imam Musa. So 7 down, 93 to go. At this rate, I'll be here until Edwin graduates. That mosque was just to speed things up. Dad just sat there, with his mouth open. After a few seconds, he swallowed and said, Martin, last I heard, over 200 people had died in that explosion, fire, whatever. They're still pulling people out of the rubble, most of them burned beyond recognition. Several countries have sent forensics experts to help identify the victims. 12,000 people took to the street in London in a silent memorial walk. Over half of those weren't even Muslim. Then they're idiots, blind to the danger that surrounds them. Okay, so I may have overshot the mark somewhat, but those explosives were going to be used to kill just as many people, except in the West or Iraq. At least now they did some good. Dad briefly buried his face in his hands, sighed and looked up. Maybe. But if that's what you're in for, there's no way they're ever letting you go. If you only get life imprisonment, that would be a minor miracle. Well, clearly we don't want that, so come on, let's have it. I beckoned at him with my hand. Have what? Oh, the money. The guard took it. He says you'll get it back. It's 3,000 Saudi riyals, the maximum amount. He said they test the bills to make sure they're not soaked in soluble illicit drugs. I knew that was the procedure for giving money to prisoners. The guards also deduct some administrative costs for themselves. I'd be lucky to get half of it back, but that wasn't my concern right now. I don't mean money, I mean the stuff, the pills or whatever it is. Hand it over, please. I'll keep it safe until the interrogations start. Martin, what are you talking about? Suicide pills. Look, Caroline sent you. She arranged this suitcase, right? Yes. Then she'll have put in something for me to end my life. Let's have a look. He grabbed the suitcase and pulled it away from me. Somehow that raised the volume. Martin, sit down. Such a portentous and mysterious monster roused all my curiosity. Then the wild, I'm sorry, it's the rolled his island bulk, the undeliverable, nameless perils of the whale. I can't seem to find the volume rocker. It's right there. I saw the murder that Caravaggio committed in 1606 was not the end of this violence. In the hinge. Another murder? No, that's the suitcase. It's one of the most senior knights in the Order of St. John in Malta. Caravaggio was arrested. Who? Dad, for fuck's sake! The attack had a profound impact on Caravaggio's mental and physical state. His vision and brushwork suffered from the assault. I wrestled the suitcase out of my old father's hands, located the volume rocker, and set the suitcase back to an acceptable volume. The recorded versions of Dad and myself were back to their background mumbling. While I had the suitcase, I searched it for hidden compartments, and found none. Told you, said Dad. No pills or anything. Oh, I'm so happy you're right, Dad, I said, crossing my arms and leaning back in my chair. Martin, we had no idea you were in this much trouble. All we knew was that you were detained and we figured you'd been caught spying. That's bad enough. In fact, Peter is proposing to kidnap a young Saudi prince so we can set up an exchange, which is... when I heard that I wasn't even sure I'd heard it right. We're ready to kidnap someone for you, but there's no way they'll exchange a... A guard rapped on the door and spoke in disturbed tones. What did he say? Asked Dad. I don't know, do I? I don't speak Arabic. Probably telling us to be quiet. You still don't speak Arabic? You've been here for 2 months. Not quite. Okay, calm down, drink your water. Is there anything else I should tell you? I don't know, do I? How many more atrocities did you commit? What was that about one guy in a mall in the desert? Oh, that? No, 2 customs officers. The day I arrived via the border with Qatar, they planted a bottle of booze in the trunk of my car. Then they followed me to an area without cell phone coverage and planned to ambush me and shake me down. Again, I might add. I wasn't having it, so I killed them and pushed their car off a cliff. Well, ledge. Incline. So that's 2, and then there was an old sod who was terrorizing a woman in a mall, so I kicked him down some stairs and he died. And then I took a girl to a hotel, which isn't allowed here, and we were caught. The girl got away, but 2 Mutaween, that's the religious police, took me to the desert and were planning to torture me with mace. So I shot one and killed the other by... I guess Dad had heard about this incident because he finished my sentence. Well, almost. Dragging him behind a... Martin, what happened to you? Killing people left, right and centre. You have a family, a son and a beautiful wife who can barely sleep, by the way. You trot off to the Middle East claiming you'll be back in a week, and then it seems you're behind every item on the news. That murder you committed, dragging that guy behind a car. That's horrible. No, 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 no. Ploughing through a high street in a truck, killing women and children, that is horrible. This is payback. Fair dues. That guy ruined countless lives, all from people who just wanted a shag.